So we are live and recording. Welcome to a new session of eCommerce Growth Summit. We have here Team Kilroy, which just told us about what life it is in how life it is in the US where he is now. Just a bit of patience so that I can properly introduce you. Tim Kilroy, he's a digital marketing agency coach after founding and scaling free agencies and coaching over 75 agency owners. He helps retailers and e-commerce companies grow their revenue and efficiency. He also helps entrepreneurs create businesses that scale fast and profitably, doing all of this through a process called Triple this. So, Tim, thanks a lot for being part of eCommerce Growth Summit, and the mic is yours.
Oh, I'm super excited to be here, and I can't believe you people are all awake because it's late where you are, and it's Friday afternoon here. But I am super excited. So I'm going to share my screen here.
So, welcome to
I wasn't really thinking I was going to have to send this anywhere.
Tim Kilroy, let's pretend nothing happened so far, and we are just starting off. So thanks everyone for joining. I'm here with Tim Kilroy, and I'm his personal assistant. He's gonna talk about the parrot funnel. So just a second to make sure everything goes through smooth. 2 more seconds, yeah, and I'm gonna share my screen with you.
Okay, there we go. Awesome. The parrot funnel. All right, so the parrot funnel, it's awareness, acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, and referral. That's sort of the whole thing, and it's AARRR. That's why it's a pirate funnel, because it makes that noise, and that's Captain Jack Sparrow, obviously. And I bet everybody knows this, but I thought it was cool that Captain Jack Sparrow is actually based on Keith Richards, which my wife, when she was in high school, actually wrote a paper called Keith Richard, Coolest Man Alive. So, anyways. Moving on from that, next slide. All right, so a little bit about me. My name's Tim. I've started a bunch of agencies. I started 3, sold 2, crashed 1. I have been an internet retailer top 50 CMO. I've worked with a bazillion startups, e-commerce people, in a bunch of agencies. And the most important things in my life, other than what I'm doing this very second, are my family, which you can see down there, and the Red Sox, which they're a baseball team. So, I'm actually not going to. And actually, Valentin, if you can hit play, or if you hit play, that way we can see it slightly bigger.
Okay, can you see another slide, because last time it hasn't worked?
No, we're still there. There we go. Okay. Now this was a quick break for everybody to wash their hands, please, because I don't want anybody on this conference call to get dirty. Moving on. Next slide. Okay. So as I mentioned, I used to be a CMO, right? And this is how I thought of myself, as like some sort of magical superhero that was in charge of turning money into more money, and I was saving the day. Well, I want to tell you about how I was thinking about this. You can go to the next slide. So I was working for a fashion retailer here in Boston. We were big. We were almost $200 million. And the things that I thought about every day, I thought about how our Google search was doing in our both paid and organic. I thought about how our email performed, because that was important. I thought about merchandising and our sales and our promotions, and I thought about our traffic, right? And that's what I thought about. Oh, and what's happening now?
I've minimized.
Right. So I was thinking. So these are the things I thought about, but there's something missing here, right? And so we go to the next slide. All of these things are supposed to result in customers, and the missing thing was here. Not that I didn't have a great hat, because I do, but if we go to the next slide, like the missing thing here is the customer. So in all of my thinking, and and we were spending a lot of money every month, and we had a lot of people focused on this, and we weren't really thinking about the customer in this journey, because we were focused on our metrics. We were looking for the proxies for success, traffic, conversion rates, click-through rates, that sort of stuff. But we had totally forgotten about the customer. And shockingly enough, that is the most important person in a transaction. So, but a great way to sort of think your way through how to troubleshoot your performance is the pirate funnel. If we can go to the next slide. Right, and so this is a graph. This is a diagram put together by this guy named Ward. He's got a really nice article in the pirate funnel. You can go to growwithward.com, and he sort of gives a masterclass in how to think about this from a SaaS perspective. But he makes this assumption that awareness and acquisition are the realm of the marketer, and everything else is the realm of the growth hacker. Now, if we go to the next slide. What I want to tell you is, you went 2 slides, that's okay. But basically, marketing and growth hacking are the same. So what we are looking at is all of these various phases of engagement that are controlled by the messaging, the media, the merchandising that you put out. And what you're trying to do is get to the next slide and figure out the one metric that matters. And in pirate funnel speak, the one metric that matters is in every phase of that engagement, there is just one metric that really matters. And so, for instance, in activation in the SaaS world, it's going to be people who signed up versus people who used it, and that's the metric who actually logged in and used your software. And that would be the metric that matters. But the metric that matters for retail is very outcome based rather than performance based, because everybody in retail and e-commerce keeps score by the number of dollars that you sell. And that actually sort of flies in the face of great process thinking, because if you are focused on the outcome, you're not reflecting on your process. And so you actually have to be much more process focused than outcome focused in order to fully activate the power of your marketing. So the one metric that matters is much more like the one thought that matters. And the one thought that matters is that we've got to keep the customer at our center as we move through this journey. All right, so next slide. Now, funnels are cool things, right? They take, they take like, big gloppy liquid and they concentrate it down so it comes, so it comes out in a nice stream. Now, the problem there, that's a bottleneck. Those two beautiful blue arrows are pointing out the flaw with funnel thinking. And the flaw with funnel thinking is the fact that we are not trying to squeeze people into a transaction or to a relationship. We're trying to facilitate one. So if we really think about it, what we're really trying to do in the world of marketing is on the next slide. We're trying to remove that bottleneck. Now, your bottleneck can actually happen in all sorts of places. In your funnel, it might happen on the acquisition side, or go ahead to the next slide. Or it might happen, later down in retention or revenue or referral. So it can happen, and the way that most people would fix a problem in the following, a problem in the acquisition side would be to make the funnel step above it bigger. And this is what happens a lot with retailers. When they have significant issues with revenue generation or conversion or whatever, they tend to focus on scaling up the thing before. So what would often happen if you're an e-commerce player and you are not hitting your revenue numbers, you think, holy crap, we got to spend more. We got to, we need more SEO. We need more SEM. We need more Facebook ads, because what you think the way to solve this is actually by pushing more into the top of the funnel. But if you go back for just a second and think about that funnel, that's just cramming more stuff into a bottleneck. And that's not what we're after. What we're really after is on the next slide, where we're just trying to make, that's 2 slides. Like, we're trying to make the whole thing bigger, right? That's the whole point. We're trying to make every part of this engagement cycle bigger than it is right now. And so let's pop to the next slide, and we'll sort of just go through a super quick exercise. So how much how much bigger can it be? So if we take a look at this, those are the stages in the left, and that 1,000 represents, if we're able to send 1,000 visitors into our site, what happens, and if we've got 10% of those visitors engage with us in some way, right? So that means that we've got 100 people who are engaged. And engaged in e-commerce world might be they have signed up for your email newsletter. They've gone 2 pages deep. They're on a product page, what have you. And if we can think of all of those engaged people, the next phase in the funnel would be acquisition. And we can think like 30% of those people might actually convert. So if you take all the engaged people and then look at your transactions, 30% might convert. 30% might actually start shopping. And then the next stage is revenue. 20% of those engaged people might actually engage. So we'd end up, from that 1,000 visitors, we'd end up with 6 buyers. And at $100 average order value, that would be $600 in revenue. Now, if we look at the next phase, which is retention, that would be repeat purchases. And so let's say that you happen to rock at retention, and your 6 buyers turned into 3 second-time purchasers. That would be an additional $300 in revenue. And then one of those 6 people or one of the 3 people who actually bought twice became a brand advocate and referred one other customer. So your total, out of those 1,000 visitors, you'd end up with $1,000, right? That's pretty good. Like, that feels all right. So let's go to the next slide, and we'll take a look at what just a small change in efficacy on every stage of this funnel means. So for our acquisition, if our acquisition stayed exactly the same, but we ended up with 5% better activation, instead of having 100 potential activated people, we'd have 105. And if we took that to an engaged level, instead of how we're an active level, instead of having 30%, we'd have 31.5%. So what we'd end up with is, instead of 33 people who are instead of 30 people who were reasonably expected to buy, we'd end up with 33, and that would result in 7 customers. And then when we go through the rest of the math, we would end up with 4 repeat customers and 1.4 referrals out of the same traffic. And the revenue change, if we skip to the next slide, remember our first revenue number from this 1,000 visitors was $1,000. Well, in this case, just by making things 5% better in each phase, we generated another $240. So like a 24% increase in revenue by making a 5% change at each stage of the funnel. Now, if you're really good at math, you can think 5% plus 5% plus 5%, right? That math sort of works out. But if you think about the incrementality of improving one part of your business by just 5%, that's something that you guys can nail, right? Because it's small. It's not like you were trying to triple your traffic or quintuple your conversion. All you're trying to do is adjust stuff by 5%. So we're not talking about big, giant, enormous changes. But these small incremental changes will actually really drive us into into a spot where we've got much better revenue. And it seems like we've lost Valentin. Is that right? Oh no, here we go. You're back. All right, cool. All right, we can go to the next slide. Okay.
Full screen, people.
Oh, look at that. So beautiful. God, my graphic skills are amazing. That's crazy. So, but you can make, by the way, you can make these simple 5 changes, these 5% changes, without spending more money, without changing your process, or without changing your targeting. And by the way, that is the target symbol. I didn't mean, but whatever, you got it. Like so like you can keep the most, like the biggest, most problematic parts of your business exactly the same, and still get these ridiculous gains by making 5% changes. And this is how we make those 5% changes. Next slide. So instead of thinking of this as a funnel where we're like cramming stuff into the top and trying to squeeze stuff out of the bottom, we got to think about this as a journey. So we really got to think about this as a trip of how do we bring people from awareness to being a buyer, and what we're doing when we flip that from funnel to this arc shape, when we flip our thinking, what we're doing is we're keeping what the customer is going through in our minds, because so this is so critical, especially when you're at scale. When I worked at Wayfair, it was so hard to keep it's so hard to keep the customer in mind when there was just so much data flowing and smashing you in the face all day. We were running 14 different attribution models, and we had all kinds of we had every analytics package in the universe, and it was so much, and it was really so hard to remember that what we were really doing is helping the customer go on a journey from learning about us to trusting enough to buy from us. And I think, folks, if you can really sort of take that funnel thinking, which is like really good for optimizing, but if we sort of like think about it as sort of a continuum where we're actually making these sort of marketing changes with the customer in mind so that we can help them graciously go on this journey, you can sort of see what happens next. Is we're going to take that journey from, if we can go to the next slide. So we can take that journey from awareness to buyer, and then we're going to take that from the point of their revenue and push it into a point of them being advocates. And so instead of this funnel thinking where each one of these phases gets smaller, we really need to think about it from the fact that we've got a dedicated, defined audience at each one of these engagement stages that we need to treat as well as we possibly can. And so the way that we make those 5% changes is this. So we turn that funnel into a circle, right? Because funnels concentrate, right? They concentrate things, but circles accelerate. And I was so very proud of myself when I came up with that little rhyme. I think everybody should clap, please. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. It's like that was like my marketing guru like high moment for today. That that funnels concentrate but circles accelerate. So let's go on to the next slide. Now, if we go back to, I don't know what to have. This is supposed to be the same slide I showed you. There we go. So if we go back to my experience as a CMO, and I'm thinking about, our search performance, I'm thinking about our merchandising and our margin and our email performance and the level of our traffic. You know what? I'm not in journey mode. I'm not thinking that along every step of the journey, I have an audience that absolutely needs to be paid attention to and loved. So if you're thinking metrically, you are losing the human element here, but more importantly, what you're losing is the fact that each stage of engagement, from awareness all the way through purchase and retention, second purchase and referral, you've got an audience that has a different need, right? The need of your people who are ready for their second purchase is vastly different than the need of somebody who's never heard of you before. And we often forget that because we start thinking metrically rather than relationally. And so we need to think about our marketing activities, and the very best way to make those simple 5% gains is to think about the people who are at that stage as people sitting in a room. How are you going to entertain them? What food are you going to give them? What kind of small talk are you going to make? Do they like champagne or beer? And what you need to think about is you need to think about people not as audiences and these big amorphous sort of collections of attributes, but people who are going through an experience in time. And when we really start to think about this sort of complex funnel as asking yourself, what does this person need from me right now? Then it's sort of as if all of the scales fall away. Like you can suddenly see things clearly for the very first time because you are able to use your human empathy and put yourselves in the shoes of that customer and think, wow, I have just spent $123.75 on a pair of pants. What do I need from the person who just sold me those pants right now? And you can think, what would I like from that person? And so if you're able to do this, it makes sort of adjusting your messaging, adjusting your UX, adjusting the frequency of communication, all of that sort of stuff. It makes it really simple because all you're thinking about is that person in a moment of time. What do they need? Now, let's go to the next slide. So, as I mentioned before in our lengthy preamble, there are two significant areas where most marketing teams are woefully and completely inadequately staffed in terms of mostly of thinking, is in these two transition points when you're moving from a buyer to a customer, and then again when you're moving from a customer to an advocate. Right. And so those 2 points, even though this is a circle and it should roll, those are the weak points in most marketing teams. Now, I'm sure everybody on this call right now, they've got this stuff locked down like you wouldn't believe. But in my experience over the last 23 years, these are the spots that are the failure points because acquisition teams stop at the minute people click checkout and retention teams don't start up until 30 days later. And then once retention teams get somebody to make a second purchase, they don't really think about that customer again until maybe it's their birthday. And so what we're doing is we're losing the opportunity to help that customer to their second purchase faster and to help that second purchaser become a brand advocate more quickly. And so we are losing some of our ability to accelerate because we're not thinking about these failure points. All right, we can move to the next slide. All right, so most retailers are really good at making a Mr. Happy customer, right? That's pretty easy. Like, you charge a fair price, you ship it on time, it's the product that you say, people are pretty happy. Like people, believe it or not, are really not that difficult to please. You do what you say and say what you do. It's really simple. Now, the place that we fail quite frequently is on the next slide, is when we are trying to get that Mr. Happy customer to turn into more happy customers. Oh, come on, Valentin. You were slowing my roll. Yeah, come on. Like this is gold here, man. So most retailers are miserable at sort of generating second, third, and fourth purchases and creating quality and positive experiences that make their customers want to share that experience with other customers. And so we spend a lot of time on the acquisition side. I would say that the vast majority of time, technology, thinking, and money goes into acquisition. But guess what? Your ability to create happy customers is mitigated because you're not spending enough time doing the things like sending them great emails, giving them quality retargeting, not the easiest retargeting, but thoughtful retargeting that's highly segmented, engaging with them in multiple channels like SMS. And so there are a vast array of tools that require you to think really carefully about where that client, that customer is in that moment of time. They've just purchased something. They just got an email. They just made their second purchase. They just learned about you. So most retailers are wielding these tools they're wielding these tools only thinking about how to get that customer to click the buy button, where they should be thinking about how to use these tools so that they can provide that customer what they need at that moment. And yes, this does require more thinking, it requires more staff, and it requires more creative resources, and it requires better data. But if you want to close the gap between what people want and what you can offer, you've got to be able to think like the people that you want to serve, and you really need to wield the tools that you have in the finest and most effective way possible, and that often comes at the expense of efficiency. So effective and efficient are not always the same. So you might end up creating 35 different retargeting campaigns to serve your customers across their journey, rather than only hitting the people who looked at a product page and didn't check out. But if you wield that retargeting, thinking about what that customer needs at that moment in time, you're helping them. You're not wasting impressions. You're helping them get to the next stage where they're doing the things that you want. Right. Next slide. All right. So again, remember that this customer is on a journey. No, not this journey. By the way, this is way better if I'm doing the slides, because what happens? Next slide. So not this journey, but okay. All right. So Journey was supposed to show up with the big red X. And I'm guessing, do you guys even know who Journey is?
Honestly,
I'm old. This is totally high school for me. Like, don't stop believing, whatever. Okay. Anyways, moving on. All right. So we better remember that this is a journey, right? So from awareness to buyer, and then next slide. Right, and we've got it. And how do we take people on that journey? So we've got to think about all of the stuff that we have at our disposal. So we've got those technical pieces that we just talked about. We've got messaging and retargeting and all that sort of stuff. But if we really get right down to it, we've got merchandising, right? So we've got the stuff that we sell. We've got the things that we say to our customers. We've got our pricing, and we've got traffic. And so those are sort of the big areas that you can think about, and how can you leverage each one of these inside of those different funnels? Those different phases. The AAARRR. How can you leverage what you have at your disposal, which is functionally these four things? Traffic, what you say, what you offer, what you price things at. How can you wield them most effectively for the audience you've got in front of you? All right, next slide. So when we effectively wield those tools like this circle, those dark failure points start to go away, because we're thinking about what the buyer needs right after they buy and before they get their next stupid email blast. And we're thinking about our regular customer how do we turn them from a regular customer into somebody who talks about our brand in, to customers that we don't know yet. And so they are actually becoming the front end of our awareness funnel, right? And so we've really got to think about how we wield the things at our disposal so that we really are thinking about our prospects and clients in that moment of time. What can we deliver to them that's helpful and that makes them feel better and makes us closer to them, right? Next slide. And what that really comes down to is all of these super duper technical growth marketing hacks, all that sort of stuff. Those are all in service of creating a brand. And brand, my friends, if you've not been in e-commerce for a long time, and especially if you were like me, where you have spent a career in performance marketing, you somehow think that brand is a nice to have. But it is those things that you say to those customers in their particular moment of time that create the emotional connection that creates a brand. And I can tell you, my friends, after having done this for more than 2 decades, because I did my first marketing campaign in 1997, which was just like, we bought keywords on AOL, which again, you guys, you're probably all too young to know that. But anyways, so if we go to the next slide, Valentin, we can leverage these messages to send a love letter to our clients wherever they are in their journey. And if we go to the next slide. Now, love letters, by the way, not like these. This is how we're thinking about COVID-19 emails everyone got this week. And by the way, I'm not calling out my friends at Indochino and Best Buy. I think Drew Green is actually an awesome CEO and a fantastic marketer. But it just happened to be one that was in my email box. So this is not what I mean by communicating with your customers in this moment of time, in their moment of time, right? So let's go to the next slide. What we really need to do is we need to put together head and heart and think about our customer in a really very human way, because we've got data, we've got creative, we've got delivery mechanisms. We know where our customers are. We know how to reach them. You just have to make sure that you are thinking about where they are. And the best way for you to think about where they are is we are all consumers. Think about where you are after you purchase something or before you purchase something, and crush and twist your marketing so that you are serving maybe not yourself, but someone who's in your emotional state. And this is really powerful because it is thinking about where those customers are. Those are how you get those simple 5% gains, because it becomes obvious what people need. So after, so not so long ago, I bought a washing machine from Home Depot. And for the next 3 months, I kept on getting retargeting ads for washing machines from the Home Depot. Now, like, they're a great company and they're super smart marketers, but holy moly, they really pissed me off. Now, I didn't write a bad review, which I was thinking about doing because they kept on wasting impressions on me. But what you want is, when you get the kind of feedback where you're getting 4 and 5 stars from your customers, that you are serving them appropriately in their moment, not your sense of the funnel, but where they are. Next slide. And we're almost done. We're around the home stretch. So the one metric that matters, folks, is the one metric that matters. Next slide. Oh, it's this. So again, I'm jumping into the Wayback Machine. So when I was a kid, this is a Fabergé shampoo commercial that talks about the power of viral marketing. Because if you have a great experience with the shampoo and you tell 2 friends, and they'll tell 2 friends, and they'll tell 2 friends, and they'll tell 2 friends. And if we think about this as the one metric that matters, if we think about how our acquisition strategy impacts and our retention strategies impact the desire, the giving that your client might do to turn something to add a viral element to it by just telling one person about it, well, holy moly, that's the metric that matters, because then you know you have served your customer throughout their experience because they feel so good about it, they're willing to tell their 2 friends. And then when you do that again to those 2 friends, holy guacamole, they're going to tell 2 more friends. And guess what? 1 person becomes 2, and 2 becomes 4, and 4 becomes 8. And pretty soon, Jeff Bezos is calling you for money. And that's not going to happen. Never mind that part. Okay. Next slide. Now, there are a bazillion tools to help you. There's fantastic things like OmniConvert. If that's not a stuck-up logo, I don't know what is. But there's email like Klaviyo, and there's data tools like Segment and mParticle, and there's CRMs like HubSpot. There's Twilio for messaging. There's Privy for data capture. There's Talkable for referrals. Like, there's a million tools. I was going to put up the Luna graph, but God knows nobody can even see that. But in the marketing technology space, there's whatever you want to do, there's a tool for it. But it is not the tools that create the virality. It is your focus on your prospect, audience, shopper, consumer, brand advocate at their moment in time. Next slide. Now, we want to take that pirate funnel and we want to infuse it with love. Next slide. And we break these bottlenecks with love. And by love, I mean thinking about your customer where they are right then. Not what's easy to do, not what the data tells you to do. Flip it, turn it around, think about what your customer needs right then, and then leverage the bazillion tools and the bazillion points of data you have to give it to them, because they deserve it. Because when they show you this kind of love by telling 2 friends, well, you owe them something. You owe them love. Next slide. Now, this looked better when all the type of, but performance marketing, friends, loves brand, because brand is the thing that accelerates performance, and brand comes about because you are able to be empathetic to where your customer is in a moment in time. And next slide, and really, this is it, guys. This is it. I know it's going to be sad, but the big takeaways are: funnels concentrate, but circles accelerate. Right? Circles turn 1 person into telling 2 people and telling 2 more, and so on. Now focus on the bottlenecks, right? Because those 5% changes generate outsized returns, and it's easy if you just think about the bottleneck in a particular phase. But performance functionally, and this is so hard for everyone to remember, performance is a brand problem. It is not a targeting problem. It's not a bid management problem. It's not a keyword research problem. It's a brand problem. And you solve all of these problems with love. That's it. We're done. My name is Tim. There's one more slide. Your time and attention is incredibly valuable. It really is. And I'm just actually quite delighted that we get to spend some time together. This has been really great. And I hope that you found this to be informative, helpful, and you enjoyed my enthusiasm, because I'm quite sure I just heard one of my kids downstairs say, "When's Daddy going to be done?"
Perfect. So, Tim, thanks a lot for making your role in the e-commerce growth summit. Hope you're staying safe there. Take care of your beautiful 5 kids. And for you out there, we are preparing for the next session with Adam and Froy. He's going to talk about how to grow your e-commerce brand with affiliate marketing. Thanks a lot, Tim, and see you next time.
All right, everybody, go wash your hands. Thanks.
As an e-commerce manager, you want to stop spending money on expensive ads. OmniConvert Explore helps you improve conversion through A/B testing, personalization, and surveys. Understand that growth is also a matter of retention, not only acquisition. With OmniConvert Reveal, you'll understand segments, monitor customer experience, and nurture your customers on every channel.